Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Working in Hockey Show. I'm your host, Nick Bowins, and today I'm very excited to be joined by the Assistant General Manager of the Philadelphia Flyers, Alyn McCauley. Alyn, how has the summer been so far, if you've gotten much of a break there at all?
It's been great. I appreciate you having me on. And yeah, no, just about a week or so ago, summer started after American Hockey League meetings and dev camp and free agency and the draft before that. So, yeah, busy times beforehand, and looking forward to some time around home to see, family and friends, and maybe a little golf mixed in as well.
Hopefully, at least a couple of rounds there. But the summer always goes quick, especially working in hockey ops, I am sure. But want to dive a little bit into your career here today, Alyn. Obviously, played many years in the NHL. The first thing I want to kind of ask about there is your transition from your playing days, into your path of coaching, scouting, getting into the hockey operations side of things. What was that transition like? Did you always know you wanted to be on the hockey ops side of things? Take us back a little bit there, Alyn.
Sure. Yeah. And surprisingly, my thoughts, say post career, were to not be involved in hockey. I took some schooling as the career wound down, and there was a strike lockout that opened the door a little bit for some of the schooling. But yeah, my plan was really to step away from the game. I'd kind of been attached to it, and that was always the want and hope was to have a career as a player, but didn't really put much thought into the other side of the game, being in hockey ops or management or scouting, any of those, or coaching to that matter. Yeah, just kind of held low for a little while with just some family time, recovered from some surgeries. Good friend, Brett Gibson, a coach at Queen's University, reached out to me, made an offer to join his coaching staff just to kind of get back involved and do something around hockey. And then the following summer, Ron Hextall reached out, asked me if I wanted to participate in as a scout with them, get involved in that regard with LA Kings, Dean Lombardi, some people that I knew from before, and yeah, just kind of had no idea what I was jumping into. Lots of road miles, hotel stays, hockey games, popcorn, coffee, lots of coffee. And then, Ron eventually brought me over to the Flyers after a great run with the Kings. Learned a lot under both Ron and Dean Lombardi, and then transition into another role with under Chuck Fletcher, and then well, I shouldn't say finally, I guess, but where we sit today, presently with Andy Briere at the helm. So kind of been around some great people, as is the case now, and yeah, it just kind of work hard, try and treat people the right way, and put in those road miles and lots of game reports and whatnot, and it's led to sitting in the position that I sit in today.
Yeah, it's very cool to kind of hear and see the progression of your career there. And, I want to go back to the scouting piece a little bit, Alyn. Obviously, again, you played the game, you know the game, but scouting, you're on the road, you're stopping in all these random small barns across the continent. How do you go about kind of learning the ropes of scouting there? And who were you able to lean on with the Kings organization, maybe other scouts in the building? How did you first kind of learn the ropes and go from, all right, I know the game, but how do I know what I'm looking for and what to do here?
Yeah, I chuckle a little bit because, when I first started, I was given a computer and a credit card and a pen and paper or some books, some report books. And the instruction was, you'll figure it out as you go. And I was like, deer in the headlights, like, are you really? Like, I'm going to do this? And But I did, and that said, I mean, there was some more instruction, some more advice and help along the way. One guy that really stands out to me that I can't thank enough for his guidance, friendship, and also there's I'll get to one point with Robbie Laird that I worked with in L.A. For many years, and the thing that I was going to highlight is the only reason we won two Stanley Cups, and the only reason that my name is on the Stanley Cup in the second one in 2014 is because Robbie decided to keep his name off the cup so that mine could go on. A very hardworking, unselfish, quiet, humble man. I know he's entering retirement this year. So just to pass out a little love for Robbie, for sure, he's one guy that has been very influential on my career on this side of the equation, on the hockey ops management side. Yeah, Robbie certainly was a big part of that in giving me guidance, advice, but also giving me encouragement. So yeah, many people, but he's one that I would certainly highlight.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear, and again speaks to the quality of people in our game, right? You touched on the Cup championships there with the Kings, and obviously saw a lot of success over the years there in LA. Was there a specific instance, maybe Alan, that you remember the first time you really wanted to go to bat for a player you'd watched, and somebody disagreed, or maybe vice versa, a success story of a guy that you were really high on?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly wouldn't single myself out. One thing that I loved about Dean Lombardi was collaboration. Getting a lot of us in the room, discussing ideas, thoughts, process. Is one of probably the biggest thing that I took from Dean was due process and putting in the time, putting in the miles to getting to know the player. You don't get it right as often as you want to. I shouldn't say it as often as you want to, but it's not like it's 100% of the time. I don't care who the best scout is in the world; they're going to miss on some players. But like I said, that collaboration. A couple guys stand out from those Cup wins that I would say that I was part of, or the pro scouting department was part of, and that would be Willie Mitchell and Mike Richards. Willie was in the lineup in 2012. Then he wasn't in the lineup in 2013, and then he was back in the lineup in 2014. But I always look to 2012 and how that team really took a step forward in knowing what it was going to take to win. And it was a collective, of course, a collective that's the best thing about the sport is it's a team. But Mike Richards just had that it factor. He just knew to target guys and to step up in key moments. And he really, I felt, gave us the right attitude from game one versus Vancouver of that beginning of that playoffs. And I know lots has been made that we were like an 8 seed and then we went on to win, and which was true. We were, I think, the third seed up until the last game, and then just the way the standings work, we lost the game, and I think Phoenix won at the time, and so they leapfrogged us. Obviously, a sizable leap from 8-3, but anyway, I go back to my point. Mike Richards really embodied a winner, a champion, and there's lots of guys on that group that kind of learned along the way, but he just seemed to have that etched in his DNA. And so those would be two guys that as far as the pro scouting department, I think that we kind of push for. The other guy would be, and again, this was more of a collaborative effort, but Marian Gaborik in 2014. I mean, there's no way that we win without his, whatever it amounted to, 13, 14 goals in that playoff run. And I still remember having everybody in the room, coaches, Daryl Sutter's in there, and everybody that was part of that staff, and it was a piece that we felt we needed to compete against the Blackhawks, who were a dynasty at that time, so yeah, there's lots of players that we could probably go back to, but those would be a few of the guys that I could reference that the group came up with that we were in agreement with that we should push for.
No, that's super cool. And like you said, it's definitely collaborative and a team effort there. But Mike Richards, like that's a hockey player through and through. The shift, the penalty kill goals, like that. That's a winner, as you said, and that's an awesome story to hear there as well. That's only 10, 15 years ago now that you were scouting with LA there, Alan. But how much has scouting changed from again that kind of time period to today, where we have so much video access? Everybody online thinks they know exactly what a player is going to be. How much has the day to day for a scout changed over your career so far?
Yeah, it's certainly it's yes, it has changed. I do think that seeing the game in person, having a feel for the energy to the game, the speed of the game, those things are still relevant. And so, being there in the building still makes sense to do that for sure. But I agree. The quality of the video, the accessibility, the way that you're able to break down the game and watch a player's shifts, or maybe you just want to watch D zone exits, or you want to watch the power play work off the half wall, whatever it may be. You can really break it down by video, or the analytics side of things. Uh, but again, at least on the pro scouting side of things, a lot of the guys do have a hockey background. They do have a feel for the game and kind of the mental makeup, that where some guys might be, really struggling, but there's something there. They're just on the cusp and they're ready to break out. And I've always compared scouting to the stock market. You're trying to follow the stocks players, and pick the ones that are on the rise, or going to be on the rise, and then or stay away from the players that are going to fall off. That's what I was going to say. Attached to the last question, or the last answer I gave, was sometimes it's about the move that you didn't make, that yes, there's times where you step up and you say we should get this guy, and then there's other times where you're like we should avoid this player. He's just, his game's fallen off. He's whatever it may be, that you've identified that isn't there anymore. And so, yeah, there's always, or they're not always, but there's two sides to the scouting aspect: the players that you're trying to go after, and then the players that maybe you don't need to go after.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And again, you've spent the past few years there as the assistant GM of the Flyers, and looking at just the team staff page, Alan. There's a great cast of names on there, from Brent Flair to Barry Hanrahan. Obviously, you mentioned Danny Briere, even on down to Dean Lombardi, John LeClaire, Patrick Sharp, all the guys that you have involved with the Flyers. There, it's awesome to see how many A Flyers legends and B hockey legends are involved with the team there. As much as you can, what's the sort of breakdown or responsibilities of the front office there? What areas are you most focused on, and maybe what's the summer look like for you as such?
Yeah, so at least for my duties, I'm involved in free agency, certainly roster construction for the Flyers, but a lot of it is with the minor league team, the Lehigh Valley Phantoms. Creating depth for the Flyers. We've had a number of draft picks over the last few years, so making sure there's good veteran players. We brought in some over the summer: Jack Sedinka, Zach Aston Reese, Cam Dineen, and we're very lucky that we've had a guy like Garrett Wilson with us for as long as we had, and it was one thing that gave me great satisfaction last year was to make that call to Garrett and let him know that he was, going back up to the National Hockey League. After however many years it had been since he'd last played up there. Such a great human being, a great character player, teammate, leader for us. So again, just to get back to the question, putting the pieces in place to be competitive, making sure guys continue to develop, have the right opportunities there. As you stated with our staff, I mean, it starts with Danny. Danny's, hardworking, very intelligent guy. Jonesy, Keith Jones, very similar. Puts a lot of miles in. He watches a lot of hockey. That would probably actually go back to your earlier point too of the accessibility of video. I don't know if anyone watches as much video as Jonesy seems to know every player around, whatever the league, KHL to the OHL to the NHL. And then, Brent Flair puts in I I don't know how many hotel stays Flaresy has over the year, but he puts in a ton of time, leads his staff, a great group. You have Riley Armstrong that heads the development staff, and that also pieces it together. Their work, that's where, Johnny Leclerc, Patrick Sharp, Sammy Moran, those guys put in time even through the summer with our younger players or younger prospects in Voorhees, where a practice facility is. And then, it never really stops. It's just kind of stages or steps through the entire year. And so anyway, that's a long-winded answer. Hopefully it hit on some of the points and some of the question that you
Absolutely.
asked.
Absolutely. No, that's great insight. And we had an interesting conversation a couple episodes ago now, Alan, with Chris Lamorello about the AHL and how you find that balance between everybody says the AHL is a development league, right? But at the end of the day, it's a sport. We want to win. We want to compete, right? How do you find that balance? Focus with the Phantoms there on you guys have a lot of great young players in the pipeline and you're hoping to get them up to the Flyers at some point, but hey, we want to win. We want to develop these guys. We want to win. How do you find that balance?
Yeah, no, it is. I don't know. I say challenge, for lack of a better term, because you don't want to block your young guys. You want to give them opportunity to, trial and error, grow, get in their power play reps or whatever reps that they, uh, the style, the type of player that you're trying to end up with at the end of the day. You don't want those guys to spend 3 years playing third or fourth line if you expect them to be a top six player at the National Hockey League. But then you also have to, bring in some depth players that want opportunity to play games with the Flyers or whatever NHL club that they're associated with. So there is a balancing act, for sure, and you want to be competitive, just as you alluded to or Chris did, and yeah, I mean, I also think if you stock the cupboard, if you continue to draft players, develop them, you will have a surplus, and then you probably end up with a really a really good product at the American League level and the NHL level. And I was lucky enough to see that take shape when I was with the Kings. We won the Calder Cup and the Stanley Cup in very short order. So it can be done. Obviously, the priority and the focus is the Stanley Cup. As 32 other teams would probably say the same, or 31 other teams would say the same. Um, but yeah, I think getting those guys into the pipeline is the first thing, and then once you start to develop more and more of those players, then then there can probably be more of a Calder Cup push.
Yeah, yeah, and you touched on Garrett Wilson there as well, and kind of the leadership that he's brought to the Phantoms. Take me back to your playing days a little bit there, Alan. Who are some of those leaders and guys that controlled the room, showed you the ropes, and really helped you adjust to the pro game? And lessons that you can pass on to players nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, I was very lucky when I came in the National Hockey League as, a young kid that never paid a bill or anything else and didn't know up from down. My first roommate was Chris King. Chris is still involved in the National Hockey League and terrific human being. A great pro. He seemed to take care of any bill that was left in our hotel room. So there was that perk as well. But yeah, it started there. Gary Roberts came along. Eventually, and Gary was, very focused. He certainly helped in a lot of ways, whether it be training, nutrition, not just for myself, but for a lot of guys. Matt's. I love Matt's. I always was taken aback by how down to earth. He was one of the best players in the world at the time. Yet he would take a few minutes every now and again. I mean, we're always chatting, but there'd be those moments where it was a one-on-one conversation to make sure that I was doing okay, mentally. How was I dealing with being in and out of the lineup? So for a guy like that to pay attention, always meant a lot to me. Scotty Thornton that I played with in San Jose and LA was very, just such a team guy. Stick up, do the right, play the right way, keep the other team honest. Was built like a Greek god, as a side note. And Yeah, I mean, Mike Ricci, just one of the great things about this sport is there's many, many good people, and I think you touched on it earlier, that are involved in this community or associated with this community, this fraternity, and that's why I always feel so fortunate that my time in this sport has been as long as it has been.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got two more here for you, Alan. One that I wanted to touch on is kind of the changing landscape of junior hockey, NCAA, etc. I know the Flyers went through it there with Porter Martone, and obviously he made a name for himself at the end of last season into the playoffs. There, it's definitely a different landscape than when you were coming up with the 67s. How do you see the impacts of the changing junior hockey, college hockey landscape on the AHL in particular, where you're focused there? Is this going to have players getting to the league sooner, later? Do they need to change some of the rules, regulations of when guys can play in the AHL? How do you see it shaping out over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I still think the dust is settling. I don't think it's totally sorted itself out quite yet. I also don't think it's one size fits all, in the sense that because it worked for Porter Martone, that it's going to work for everybody. I think the player has to be at the right point of their development. It was the right stage. I mean, Porter had already played 3 years of junior hockey, so it seemed to make a lot of sense. It seemed logical for him to just step into college, whereas, not quite at the pro game, but older players, having to deal with a little more speed, a little more quickness, a newer challenge. So yeah, I don't know how it's all going to sort itself out or take shape in the end. I could see it being the OHL is a little bit younger, and some of the guys that are, um, uh, you know, not quite there, that could have been thinking about going to college are now going to entertain more junior hockey early on, and then maybe be in a similar spot as an example as Porter, that by their fourth year, a would-be fourth year in junior hockey, maybe those guys are starting to shift over. But again, I don't think you can have everybody that falls in that category shift over to college hockey. So there might be some that have gone over there and come back. So it will be very interesting over the next few years to see how it plays itself out. And I don't quite have the final answer or final thought on that.
Yeah, it's definitely a fluid situation, but I think, like you said, it's a positive, the players have options, right? And whether that's again Porter's situation there, and or you look back to in Austin Matthews going and spending a year in Europe to develop. Like there's no one size fits all, and having options for the players is never a bad thing, like you said. This has been awesome, Alyn. I really appreciate the time, the insight through your career and journey here. But the last question that we always ask to wrap up the show here is. Best piece of career advice that you can give. So, for anybody looking to get into the hockey operations side of things, what advice would you give a young professional or a college student looking to pursue that career?
Um, yeah, put me on the spot here. What would I say? What served me well is really just be willing to work hard and be a good teammate. I don't think there's any fast tracking on this side of the business. I think I've learned a lot as I've gone along. I wasn't, to be honest, I didn't have the ambition that I was going to sit in this position or this chair that I sit in. It was just to be, continue to be part or connected, continue to be connected to hockey. And I've been very fortunate that people have allowed me to do that. So yeah, I don't think there's any secret method or recipe to doing it. It's just you know. Be willing to put in some road miles, drink some bad coffee and too much popcorn, and be willing to learn. Like don't think that you always have it figured out, or this player is never going to play. I've heard that many times and been wrong, or those people have been wrong. A lot of players develop at different times, and you just got to keep at it and keep watching because players do change and players develop, and some are late bloomers, and you just got to be keep an open mind and open eyes, and be a good person, and that can should open doors at some point.
No, I think that's great advice. And like we said earlier, there is so many outlets to consume hockey and scouting reports and analysis these days. So always be learning, like you said. And overnight successes are never actually overnight. So great advice, Alyn. Really appreciate the time here. And to everybody listening, watching, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Working in Hockey Show. We'll see you next week.